All right. So we'll do some quick, what is the UXR Guild for those who are new to this session who didn't make it last time. I'm going to keep introductions a little bit shorter this time just so we can get into the meat of the topic. We have a guest speaker. That was something that a lot of people had requested on the evals. So I do look at those evals and I do look at your inputs. So please, at the end of this session, another one will come out. Would appreciate it if you put in your feedback about me, about our guest speaker, and future topics as well. So the UX Guild, if you don't already know it, it's a community for UX researchers and how we meet, interact, and learn from each other. There's programs on how to freelance. It's a nonprofit. If you want to learn more about it, go to the link. I'm not going to go into it too much since I did last time. So our guest speaker today is someone had asked a lot about not someone. You guys all asked a lot about questions about how to freelance, finding clients, what are the best parts, how to handle the non-UX parts of it, the financials and all that other fun stuff. So I actually asked Raymond, our founder of the UX Guild, to come be our guest speaker today, feeling like he knows this best. He also runs a session on how to freelance. So maybe you guys can take that session as well if you find out that today this is what freelance is good for you. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Raymond, since I know that you guys have a lot of good questions for him. I know he's got some stuff that he wants to share, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So,
Susan, thank you so much. Awesome to be here. Of course, some of you I do know from my How to Freelance class. So you may already know most of what I have to tell you, but hopefully we're going to discover some new things here tonight, learn from each other. And I really just want to focus on exactly what you're interested in learning, so that it's a very customized session. So, think of what you would like to come away from this session with, and then I hope to, provide plenty of time for input. I guess I'm just going to start and share some slides and go over some material, and then let's just stop, and that maybe will give you some things to think about in terms of questions. So, so let me just start and see. Okay, can you see my screen? So one of the, all right, here's my intro, by the way. I'm so proud of my family. My 4 sons and my wife are my why for freelancing. It's awesome to have flexibility to spend time with the people you care the most about. Okay, so here's what I came up with for a quick agenda. One, some people just want to know how to get started. Like, all right, what are first steps? What should I be thinking about? How to find clients. That's usually people's biggest question and challenge. And then other, legal, accounting, etc. So let's just glance at how to get started and then see if that triggers some questions that we can talk about. So the first question is, what is it that you'll offer as a freelancer? What have you done? What can you do for others? And, you can just look at your employers, the industries you've worked in, the products you've worked on, the kinds of studies you've run, the tools you've used, and come up with what are your unique strengths. A lot of people think, okay, I'm just a qualitative researcher like so many others, and really start to differentiate yourself. When you look at the specific things you've done, you'll see that you're different you're not just a qualitative researcher. You have unique strengths and skills and abilities. So kind of dive into those, see where you think you're strongest, and where your passion is. What you love is probably the place you ought to start in terms of what you offer to others. So 1, where to start? Well, what are you going to offer? 2, who are you going to, what should you be doing to start? You should be thinking about your network, your in-person network. So who are the people that know you? Your colleagues that you've worked with, attending people you've met at events like this. Do you volunteer? That's a great way to get to know people and to get known by others. And of course, the main thing are the managers, the UX research managers who can hire you. So in terms of getting started, you should really be assessing that network and strengthening it. How do you strengthen your in-person network? Keep in touch with people. And any UXR managers are worth, that's the connection you want to keep the strongest. So that's a place to be thinking about. Yeah, ideal. You have some former managers who might be willing to hire you as a freelancer and numerous colleagues who know and respect you. Okay, so that in-person network I think is the most important, but online networks are important too. A lot of ways to build your online networks. You're doing it now, being active in finding and attending things, building your followers, your connections on LinkedIn, etc. So that's another place to be mindful. Your ideal is you're somewhat active. If you want to become a freelancer, you probably need to become more active than you have been online. So it's just an investment of time. And you may decide you're going to be a content creator. You're going to start posting things that you write, or anyway, that's one common approach. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Right. Ideally, the things that you post should make managers who don't know you want to work with you. So don't post silly, stupid things. Post things that are somewhat relevant with, research, so that the people who see them will go, oh, that's great. They have experience in a domain I care about. Anyway, they'll have respect for you, want to hire you. Okay, one other thing, in terms of what can I do now for freelancing? Freelancing is financially variable, unstable, risky. So the more you can stabilize your finances before jumping into freelancing, the better. So this is kind of a what can you do now? Just start to try to stabilize. Now, a lot of people want to freelance to increase their income, which of course is a fine motivation. But because there will be ups and downs, it's nice if you can to pay off debt, increase your savings. I wouldn't buy a new car. I wouldn't do things that weaken your financial position if you really think you're going to dive into this. Now, of course, you can freelance part-time, and that's what I recommend to start. So it's not like you're jumping off a cliff. I would never recommend just quit your job and start, but you'll have more peace of mind the more financial stability you have. And of course, it takes discipline to manage freelance finances, because 1 month you may get a $10,000 check, the next 2 months, nothing. So so if you don't have that discipline right now, it's a good thing to start developing. Okay, so that's it. So that's my quick hit on where to get started, what you should be thinking about. What is it you're going to offer, and be strengthening your skills, building your network in person and online, strengthening your finances. Now, these things I didn't talk about, but you should be learning about freelancing. Obviously, you're here. This is fabulous. I'm a huge advocate of find a partner. It's just, life is easier when there's someone else you're doing it with. So somebody else who's on this same journey of freelancing. Of course, you can have mentors who are ahead of you and who can tell you what's coming, help you prepare. But you can also just have a peer and just have somebody else you can talk to as you're going along. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and just say, based on what we said so far, questions, concerns,
There was one question in the chat. So Sarah, if you want to ask, you may, or I can read it. So she's still on mute, so I'm just going to ask for Sarah. It says, I'm interested in learning how to find clients, especially your first initial client. And I know there was a marketing class, but I didn't think it was quite deep enough.
Okay. Your initial client should be someone you've worked with before. Right? Your initial client is somebody in your past employment, the person who knows you the best. You probably know them and would be more valuable in going back to work for them than someone else they could call. But your first client ideally will know you. You know them already. Because those are the easiest ones to get. That person is much more likely to hire you than somebody you meet online, who doesn't know you. You're not in their same city. You've never worked together. So, but we're going to talk about marketing in a minute. So I don't want to go too much in that. The second section we're going to talk about is getting clients because it's a big topic, but that's my quick answer. Where's your first client? Hopefully you already know them. Other thoughts about what we've talked about so far? Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And feel free, of course, to chime in if you got something you'd like to say. Okay, so how do you get clients? That's the hardest thing. Well, marketing and sales are two options for getting clients. Of course, the best way is people who already know you, and we'll kind of talk about that some, but marketing and sales. So what's marketing? Marketing is work you do to try to let people know about you so that they'll call you for work. They'll reach back and contact you. You're trying to build awareness, generate inbound inquiries. You do marketing to a broad audience. You send out 10 or 20 or 50 of something, or you're posting, online. So it's kind of this, it's like a shotgun. You're just shooting it out there and you hope that somebody who is important hears it, and responds to you. Sales, very different. Sales is targeted to individuals. You're calling people, you're emailing, you're contacting one at a time. You know they're the right person. This is not a shotgun. This is, individual. And it's targeted. And most of us feel uncomfortable with sales. We feel much more comfortable with marketing, just like, I'm just going to put it out there, But you don't know if any of that marketing effort is hitting the right person. The beauty of sales is how targeted it is. It's hitting the right person. They may reject you, they may not be interested, but you're reaching out to the exact people who you want to know about you. So for that reason, sales is very effective. Okay, so we'll start by talking about marketing because most people do that. You can do it in person as you meet people. Of course, the target person you're trying to meet is that hiring manager, someone who's got a budget to hire freelancers, and also at a company that hires freelancers, which not all of them do. I was just at a conference. Was it last week? I was just at a conference. I was in New Orleans, and it was put on by User Testing. So it was a bunch of their clients and users. And of course, most of us have not been to those in-person conferences in 2 years. It was amazing to be there in person and to meet people. And when you've met someone in person, you have such a powerful connection. So, don't discount that. Not that I'm suggesting you travel for them, but in your local area, right, especially if you live in Brooklyn. I mean, there must be so many great in-person events in New York City, right, where you can meet people. But anyway, wherever you live, there's probably some things that are happening. And of course, you can do online things too, but all right, onward. Companies that fit your ideal profile, whatever your specialty is, whatever you're offering, and you should have something very specialized you're offering, that's the company you should go after. If you don't, and if this is hard, just think of who was your last employer and then find companies like them, because companies want to see that you've worked for another company just like them. So anyway, whoever you're working for, start there, that industry, that whatever that is, financial services, healthcare, B2B SaaS software, those companies will be most interested in you. Those will be the easiest ones to win over as clients because you're doing work very similar to theirs right now. Okay, well, volunteering is a great way to meet. I mean, I've mentioned this already, great way to meet clients as well. So UXPA, whatever organization that might be in, that's a great investment of time. And then online marketing, of course, you're all somewhat familiar with this. Oh gosh, I'm about to sneeze, but maybe I won't. Sorry, excuse me. So you can look for work in the online marketplaces. Generally, that's low-level work, Upwork, Fiverr, Freelancer. But that's one way to start and to get to your name out, and you sort of, there is a progression where you sort of start at a lower level as a freelancer and work your way up to the best work. And of course, your own website is a great way to market. And then content, if you want to do content. Okay, so onward. Your LinkedIn profile is critical in terms of marketing. You should look at it carefully. If anyone is willing to have us look at their LinkedIn profile, I'd be happy to look at it together and just see what tips we might have for someone. Your portfolio or case studies, those should support whatever your specialty is that you're offering to clients, but those are super important in whatever area you're trying to specialize. Your website, this is a whole, there's a whole discussion about this, but in terms of building your website, should you or should you not? If you're going to be a serious freelancer, absolutely you should. There are services that make it easy, like Wix and Squarespace. What's the key thing about your website? The search engine optimization, that the content that's there, when people search for a freelance UX researcher in New York City, they'll find you because of the things you've put there. So that's really the whole point of your website is search engine optimization, because it'll bring people to you. Okay, we can talk more about that. Obviously, there's so much to talk about here. So other ways to market your service. So this is sometimes where people do blogging, podcasting, a webinar. You could host a session at the Guild. To me, that would be the easiest way to start something. If you felt you had some expertise and you wanted to share it, we could create a session, invite a group, and that's a great way to get started, meet some people, connect with some people. Oh gosh, okay, here's what that just made me think of. I created a networking spreadsheet for tonight's session, and I haven't even put it up. So I'm going to stop. Let's stop and talk about what we've talked about so far. And I'm going to share a link for this session, for this spreadsheet. And anybody who wants to can enter their info in this spreadsheet and then network with others who are in this session. And that's a great way to start building your network. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this link. I apologize. Okay, let me copy the link. I'll paste it in the chat. And then anyone who wants to can go out and connect with some others and start building your network. Okay, there you go. So it's in the chat. And if anybody wants to, you're welcome to put your info there. Of course, you're not obligated to, but you can put your info there and maybe get 5 or 10 more connections tonight to build your LinkedIn network. Okay, so that's kind of an initial shot at marketing, one of the 2 parts of the way to reach out to find clients. Questions, thoughts about that? Has anyone tried it? What have you tried? How has it worked? Maybe you're still just sort of planning, which by the way is awesome. If you're planning ahead and you're thinking, well, I want to freelance down the road, that's ideal because you can build your network now. If you know you're going to freelance in, a year or some period of time, you have that amount of time to be prepping, strengthening your in-person networks and doing the kinds of things that will help you be more successful when you do it.
I have a question.
Okay, awesome.
Can you talk specifically to like what your LinkedIn should look like as a freelancer versus like a full-time role?
So can we go look at your LinkedIn, Amy?
Sure.
I know, I don't mean to be too, but I mean, it's just nice to have
I mean, you can look at, I just like haven't done anything to it. I work full-time right now, but I mean, some background, like I've been getting a lot of freelance gigs from people I know since I like told them I'm doing this. So that's where I'm at right now, but like, it's also kind of casual.
Well, that's a great sign. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share share my screen?
You can share it.
Okay, good. I'm here. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see this? Okay, Amy Lanza, you were user research at Modern Health. So I'm guessing, is some of your freelance work in healthcare?
No, actually, I mean, I've worked in a ton of different industries. It's like e-com, retail.
Is it from your, so tell us where it's coming from. Where do you know the people from who are reaching out to you?
Urban, which is like a few jobs ago.
Okay, here.
And then I have one from my agency.
Code and Theory. Okay, well, it makes perfect sense to me that if you did retail research, that people would reach out to you for that. And these are great brands, right? These well-known brands, of course, people have confidence in. If you work for them, they want to be the next Anthropology Group. So if you help them, they trust you to help their organization as well. I mean, one thing I would say is this: we sometimes do an exercise where we search on strings on Google and then see who pops up. And surprisingly, individual LinkedIn records will be on the first page of Google results. And so you want to think, well, what string, if someone's searching on Google for me, what might they be searching on? What might they be searching? What do I want? I'm having trouble saying this. What are the search strings that I want to find me? And then you make sure they're on your LinkedIn in a prominent place. So prominent, by the way, is more bolded type. And so here, for example, I might change this to UX researcher. I mean, whatever the most common, I might even say user experience researcher, because that's the term people are probably going to search on. You say you're in New York, so it should pick up the geography. And then, you know how you can put a lot of detail about each job? And then, some people have a couple sentences and it says, click, read more. I would put detail for each of your jobs. And what you're doing right now at Modern Healthcare, and really your point is keywords. And so you might say, I'm doing, what methods you're using, what tools you're using, all the specific keywords somebody might be searching to find you. Because not even your own website, even your LinkedIn can pop up if they type freelance UX researcher, healthcare, New York City. You want your profile to pop up. And they might even say user Zoom, or tools they're using, or methods, diary studies, or so you just want. I would just add the content that'll be full of keywords that they're going to be searching for. By the way, it's also just good content if they're looking here. If I'm in healthcare, I'm going to look at your experience at Modern Healthcare, and I want to click and read, what have you done there? And so if you can tell me the kinds of studies you've been doing, the kinds of participants, if it's what I need, that will stand out to me immediately. Because you want to hire someone who has done exactly what you want done. Even though you could do 100 kinds of studies that you haven't done but are similar, you have the experience, you'll stand out to the employers who want to do exactly what you've done before. So describe it in detail so they can find you.
That's helpful.
Okay, good, thank you. I mean, you look great. Columbia is so darn impressive, Amy. One of the smartest people I know came from Columbia. And if that weren't enough, Vanderbilt, University of Pennsylvania. Anyway, those things all help you, name brand companies that you've worked for, a good education. The agency work is cool. I might list clients. Oh, here you have a Seymour. So let's see what you say. Okay, well, you do list clients. And if you could, if you wanted, you could type their industry as well. So that you've got an additional keyword. So instead of H&M, or in addition to H&M, it's like retail, you sort of sort them out into retail, consulting, nonprofit, healthcare, tech. And that way, if they're searching for freelance UX researcher, New York City, nonprofit, they find you.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Okay. All right, we'll stop this. But your profile looks great. I'm thrilled to hear you're getting work, Amy. That's awesome.
It's people I know, so it's not like I'm getting found, but thanks.
But isn't that the key thing? That's how you get freelance work. It's people you know. Because we all want to hire somebody we know, we trust to do the work. And so you're not likely to get work from strangers. We all think, well, I'm going to put it out there and strangers will start calling me. But it's more likely that people people who know people you'll kind of work out that way. That's the more likely way that you'll build your network and find clients, until you're known on the level where, you're kind of, you hit a new level where you look so good, whatever it is that's made you more prominent has people calling you, even though they haven't worked with you before, they don't know you. Okay, any other questions on marketing? And then we're going to switch to sales for a minute. Okay, good. I am going to, hang on a second, stop. I gotta get my slides back up. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that was marketing, some things you can do for marketing. Let's now talk about selling, which most people are less comfortable with, but I personally am an advocate of. So the most important people in your professional network, the research hiring managers, your research colleagues, product colleagues, they don't even need to have been in research, but if they worked with you and liked you, they could be in design, engineering, marketing, whatever, and still remember you and call you in. So So all these colleagues, it's just, if there's some way you can keep this network strong, that's a really vital thing to be doing. One thing is just letting them know you're taking freelance work, you're accepting freelance, you're looking for freelance work, or you're freelancing. So if they're aware of it, that's awesome. You know, you just, hey, I'm aware of it, and my best jobs come from referrals. You know, whatever you can think of that lets you reach out to them and remind them is great. Now, the hard part is talking to, reaching out to people who don't know you. But so you're going to identify companies that you think you want to work for. You can identify companies where others are working. Maybe they haven't referred you, but you worked with a designer and now they're working for a company. That's a great intro into that company, even though you can ask them to introduce you. But even if your colleagues haven't introduced you, you can call that manager and say, well, I'm aware of you because I worked with a designer who's now working for you when I was at Urban Outfitters. And, she likes work. She thinks it's great working with you. I just thought I'd let you know. I want to introduce myself. I'm taking on freelance work as a researcher and just wanted to get a sense of what your needs are. Do you ever use freelancers? Do you have projects coming up? What kinds of studies would you have a freelancer run? Anyway, so this whole idea of you're going to identify individual people, that you want to reach out to and talk to. Sorry about that. And you're going to reach out to them by email, on LinkedIn, however you're going to do that cold out. Of course, you'll try for an intro. That's a great way to do it. But if you can't get an intro, just cold outreach. The brilliant thing about sales is your effort is going right to a targeted prospect who you think is someone you could do good work for, that your experience fits their needs. That's time very well spent. So most people don't get to this level of reaching out, but I'm persuaded an hour doing this is more effective than an hour doing social media marketing, posting, whatever. Especially if you do this kind of wisely, like piggybacking on other people that that might be working in companies, reaching out to those companies. That's a great way to reach out. And, I think people are pretty receptive when you're able to say, yeah, I worked with, Suzanne, she's now at your company. And so I thought I would reach out and introduce myself. Okay, let's stop.
Raymond, Colin has a question he put in the chat.
Okay, let's hear it. Or I guess let me look. Okay, sorry about that. Here we go. How would you market, sell yourself as a UXR to companies you've worked with in the past doing something outside of UX research? There are two ways to read that question. One is you were not a researcher at that company and now you're doing research. So that's how I'm going to read that question, because we're all about doing freelance UX research. So, but you can verify, Colin, is that the sentiment that you weren't a researcher there, but now you want to go back as a researcher?
Yes, that's how I was trying to phrase that question. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, perfect. The other way to read that is you were a researcher there and you want to go back doing something other than research. But okay, well, it's a little trickier because they now know you. Hopefully they like you, trust you, but it's in a different role. And it may be very difficult to get them to see you in your new role, right? You've progressed to become a researcher since you left there. And that can be difficult, but all I can say is to show them what you've done since you left working for them. So whoever that key person is, presumably the research manager, to show them work samples that you've done since you left, to see if they'll meet with you. If you worked there before, then it might be easy to go out to lunch with them or go get a brief meeting with them, where in person you could describe the kinds of things you've done and now what you could offer them because you've done it for somebody else. I mean, it's ideal to know the people because doors are open that wouldn't be open to someone that didn't know them. So you have a huge advantage. And frankly, even though you didn't do research there, you know a lot about the company, you know the other employees, you know about their customers. So you bring a lot of value because of what you know from having worked there before. But no, that can be very difficult. They see you in whatever role you were in. It could have been design or marketing and since then you've moved on to research. They may just think of you as a designer. Let me just say one other thing, which is a lot of time, one of the important things you market is your experience outside of research. So when you build your profile of what I'm going to offer as a researcher, a lot of times it can be, I was a designer and became a researcher. And a lot of clients are looking for that. Someone who was a designer has all kinds of domain knowledge and design that they bring to research. And so for some, that's ideal. Possibly then, Colin, for your past employer, it will be valuable to them that you came from marketing or product or wherever it was into research, because you know a lot about that other domain. And now you've added research onto it as well. It's just a matter if you're able to persuade them, if they think you can do what they need done. I mean, okay, here's the other advantage, and you've worked there before. You can go tell them what they need done. Like you can say, look, I worked here. I know what's happening. This is a big opportunity that's being missed. I want to run a study for you. I think if we interview 20 of our clients, they'll validate something that we're not paying attention to that's money for you. So if you can somehow point out how you're going to improve their product or increase their revenues, you know things that someone from the outside wouldn't. So use your inside knowledge.
No, that's great advice. Thank you.
Okay, awesome, Colin. Other thoughts? Kind of getting anyway, other specific questions, situations.
There was a question earlier from Nicole, I believe. Yep. And it doesn't really pertain to what you were just talking about, but since we're only got 10 minutes left, I figured I'll throw it out there.
Sounds good.
Suggestions on how to set up the legalese, such as setting up a company, making sure your contracts are accurate, taxes, etc., or when to start worrying about those things if you don't have time to talk about the suggestions now. But
Okay. All right, Nicole, I see a couple questions here about LinkedIn and about legal stuff. Okay, well, I'm going to just share my screen and we'll talk about, I mean, there are a lot of legal and accounting issues. So I have two in my How to Freelance. I have one whole session about legal things and another session about bookkeeping, bidding, benefits. So I welcome you to come to those sessions and have a deeper dive. In fact, later in the month of November, we do the legal one, and there's a freelance attorney from New York City who comes on as a guest and talks about a lot of issues. So, so one of the big areas is choosing an entity if you're to the point where you want to set up a company. And so I just grabbed that slide from this just to chat about tonight. So one question is, should I be a sole proprietor, an LLC, or a corporation? You really don't need to worry about that until your freelancing income, reaches a certain level. But that's one of the kinds of things we talk about in the legal session. Another one is on contracts, disputes, collections. Once again, that's kind of more advanced stuff. Usually you don't have a dispute or problems with collections until you're working with quite a number of clients. But the one thing is, where do you find like your boilerplate contract to start? And there are a couple places to recommend that. You can just find standard agreements, written by attorneys, and then just make modifications. And you really don't have to hire an attorney to do that. In fact, Amy, we should ask, do you have an agreement that you sign with something that you give to clients for freelance work?
Yeah, I had a friend who is doing contract stuff, and she actually shared hers with me. So I used it.
That's isn't that a great way to do it? Like somebody has one, they just share it with you. You know, the contract is usually not a big part of it until you're more. Anyway, if you just find a boilerplate, have a friend that has one. In fact, I think in that legal session, I share something, just the boilerplate that I have from one of the sites. And so you're welcome to use that. But yeah, we'll go into more detail in the legal session if you're interested, or in the accounting, bookkeeping session as well. Okay, well, if there are other questions, feel free to ask them. Of course, you can follow up and ask me one-on-one as well. But I guess let me just wrap up and say this. Freelancing is so individual. Who you know, what you've done, what you want to do, right? Is it just part-time on the side? And because it's so individual, the right approach for you is likely individual as well. And you might just look at what are your unique opportunities where you're meeting people. And then just capitalize on those, you know, but so I guess I just want to say, look at your individual situation. These ideas may be a little generic. So specifically, what are the opportunities you have to meet people wherever you are? You know, some of you are in big cities. There are opportunities in big cities. But that doesn't mean if you're in a small city, you're out. You've got special opportunities too, whatever they might be. So I guess I just want to say that as opposed to looking for, you know, looking for the right way for you, what's comfortable for you in reaching out to people. What are the things you're offering? Anyway, it's individual. So just think about your individual circumstance. Reem, I'm thinking about you in academia and in Canada. Those are two very unique things for you. But, you know, people respect someone who's who's been working in academia for 10 years. So there's special advantages there. There's special projects that someone would want someone coming out of academia to work on. So, you know, think of that. And Canadian, I mean, generally, my impression of Canadian researchers is well-educated. I have a lot of respect for research that's happening in Canada. Canadians are the nicest people in the world. Anyone who's visited Canada knows just how easygoing and kind the people are. So anyway, whatever your advantages might be, think of those as unique advantages. And the cost of living is lower in Canada. So you can talk about, you know, maybe your rate can be lower, and that's an advantage. Anyway, based on whatever your factors are, there are advantages. Now, one trick is an American company maybe it's tricky to get them to use a Canadian freelancer. So maybe you go through an intermediary. So maybe you look to agencies or an intermediary that you could go through, which of course the guild would be an ideal one, so that they're contracting with an entity that's US based, but working with you out of the country. Anyway, whatever your unique circumstances. Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Let's see.
You know,
Raymond.
Yes.
Amy had a question on, and I've been trying to figure out which session it was in, on how to think about pricing fixed fee. So fixed rate versus hourly. And so I put a link to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos from past sessions that are there. Is there a specific one that addressed that?
Amy, did you hear Danielle as a special guest, or Martha Malloy?
I heard Martha. I don't know about Danielle.
Okay. Both of them touched on, well, Danielle's a great tape for you to watch. We're just putting it up and it's not public yet, but her tape, she talks a bit about fixed fee pricing, which she prefers. and she talks about why, and she talks about how she does it. So there's some great content there. Let me just say this, we're going to touch on that in the next session of how to freelance, which is I'll give you actually a request for proposal that was sent to the Guild, and I'll let you see a real proposal for you to generate a bid, and then we'll compare bids when we come back together. So it's great to just sort of have an experience and just try to figure it out yourself. Like, what am I going to do? And then come back and get the answers. So like Susan did this in one of our sessions, and Susan had an answer, had a bid. Do you remember what your bid was, Susan?
I remember I came in low. I did not give myself enough credit, but I can't remember exactly what I came in at. But yeah, I looked at recruiting, I looked at hours and things like that. And the Danielle session was really cool on that one because it did talk about the different ways to budget it. So I was going to reply to Amy saying same thing. Watch
Okay.
that video.
Actually, I can't. I was going to talk about the numbers, but I shouldn't because it will ruin anyone's
Oh, true.
experience who comes to do
Yeah.
this. I don't want you to
Going
know
higher
what the
than you
numbers
think.
are. No, but
Well-
you were fine. You didn't talk about the numbers. But anyway, it's good to have an example and just come up with your number and then compare it to 5 other people. I mean, you really are just putting out what you'd like, what you think you can get. But then it's nice to have other people to get feedback. What you don't ever have with a bid is feedback, right? You either get the job or don't, but you usually don't get feedback. And
But
so,
also don't underestimate your value. I mean, a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm new to this, I'm going to charge less. And people will pick you because you charge less. And then you'll realize as you go in and the hours add up that you should have charged more. So think about it. That's why it's good to have those comparisons. That was a great exercise because you got to see what other people were charging. So you could say, okay, I am coming in way low. Maybe come in a little low because you're new to it, but not drastic.
okay, great advice, Susan.
We are coming close to 9 o'clock. So any other questions for Raymond? Because I know people have other events this evening or 6 o'clock, depending where you are.
I'm glad I hope there's something useful that you can glean from what we talked about tonight.